And we're live. Welcome to Monarchist Minutes. This is the royalist news from the U.S. of A. I am John Arnis, Chancellor of the Monarchist of America Discord server, as well as the community at large. My cohort is William Stout. He is the Vice Chancellor of Monarchist of America. And he is the second in command here. And then you have Charles York. He is our publicist chair. And he deals with a multitude of our social media accounts and whatnot. And then, of course, you have Victor Smith. He is our diplomat. And we appear to have a question in today.
Yes, we have a question in from YouTube user Another Steven. Hi, I am in the UK and fascinated by your broadcasts. From what I ascertain, you do not advocate the kind of monarchy we have here today, but closer to what existed in the 18th century, except with universal franchise maintained for congressional elections. Who might your royal family be?
All right, so what we're going to do here, if somebody will be willing to pull up the official statement on this subject from the platform, it's readily accessible. If somebody's willing to pull that up while we respond, I would say, Victor, you can do that right now as I explain what the idea of what I personally see of what my me personally, I don't really. I'll do the second thing first because it's a lot simpler. As far as a house. I don't particularly look at the house right now. I do kind of. I wish we had a good Washington, like a Washington descendant to hand the crown to, but of course we do not. And those might and the people that might be decent probably aren't willing to do that. I'd say something like that. They marry into a royal family. That's all good, well and good. That's what Napoleon did, so that's fine. Of course, we can go overseas, and I would personally like somebody like the Habsburgs or something like that. But of course, it's all up in the air right now. We aren't focused on who would be king. I know that's kind of become a meme at this point on the various monarchists subreddits out there. That who would be king of America? It's like, no, we're not trying to answer that question yet. We're trying to build a foundation of what American will look like.
I will read the section on picking a monarch from our platform. Emily,
want to have everybody go through it, and then, or do we want? Because I've already kind of stated my position.
Let's let everyone state their individual personal positions, then I will read the official platform answer, but first give my personal opinion. So William, go ahead, followed by Charles.
Oh, Charles, you're going to have a little bit to edit out this beginning here, but anyway, my name is William Stout. It's a pleasure to have you all here this evening. Good to see some new faces as well as some old faces. When it comes to me, I hope to see that as we develop as a nation, we develop a sort of Roman idea of a civic monarchy where a lot of the Republican political culture is preserved, but it has a monarchy that supports it and keeps it in order. So we have basically the best of both worlds, and it would fit America much better. But when it comes to an actual house, I have thought about it for a little bit, and I've thrown around several ideas. One of them would be to bring the royal house of Hawaii back in because, well, we drew them off their own throne anyway. It would be sweet, sweet irony if they ended up ruling all 50 states and their territories. And I've thrown around the idea several times to everyone here, the idea of maybe going through each of the old ruling families or tribal royalty of all the Native American nations in the U.S. and seeing if there are any of them who would either A, make great candidates, or B, be willing to become a monarch of the entirety of the USA. Because if we want to go based off of land claim, those families and those lines would have the best claims to the land before any traditional European or any American family of just pulling some random dude off the street, Caesar style, and making them king.
All right. Is that what you got? Is that sufficient of an answer? You got it. You're good.
I think that's a sufficient. Well,
Put it on to Charles.
okay,
Yeah,
gave it to Charles.
Well, for me, I am a little more, shall we say, concrete. In my opinion, the particular house would currently be von Wittelsbach, but that's not just because, random German house be random, but because they are currently the heirs to the Jacobite claim. And I feel as if any royal house to assume control of the United States would have to have some sort of historical tie to this country. And if you're a Jacobite like myself, you believe that the Jacobite claimants are obviously the lawful rulers of the United Kingdom and their empire across the seas and all that jazz. So as it happens, the Stuarts, who were the ones who were deposed by, well, a Stuart and her Dutch husband, they ruled America at the at our colonial possessions, when we were colonial possessions rather. So they have that tie already. Also, interestingly, the up and coming Jacobite claimant also has ties to our Spanish and French roots, which is important. But in terms of the particular qualities I like to have, and I will admit they don't. The current Jacobite ruling house doesn't have them, partly because the current claimant doesn't really have anything to exercise, so he has no reason, I guess, to be the ideal monarch when he has no power whatsoever. Um, yes, I think, fundamentally Catholic, not just in the idea of being Catholic personally, but also Catholic social teaching with ideas like solidarity, and other important teachings of the church that are necessary for a harmonious society, as well as the fact that Jacobitism itself is an interesting form of government for me, in that the way that they have it set up, it's not an end to parliamentarianism per se. It's just that the monarch gets to assert his right to rule as well as reign, and he gets to check parliament whenever they step out of line, and also the emphasis on local liberties. So, while hypothetically all power is in the hands of all worldly authority rather is in the hands of the monarch, the local levels are also involved. So that just kind of comes part and parcel with wanting the Jacobite heir, is that, I guess, at least for me, that wanting the Jacobite ruling philosophy, which is more an answer to the first question that another Stephen proposed, and I guess I've taken up a wee bit of time, so I'll pass it to Victor, and then Victor again for the official MOA platform.
Yeah. These are personal beliefs. Now we're going into what the platform states, and
Well, I will first give my personal belief, then I will go into what the platform says.
Yeah, of course.
All right, take it away, Victor.
Thank you. So, my personal belief is that in order for a monarchy in America to be seen as legitimate in the eyes of people when we rebelled against the illegitimate monarchy in England, of course, but we would have had to have selected a royal house to rule over us. There was a scheme to put one of the Prussians in charge that fell through, of course, and Mr. Washington decided to not take the throne that was offered to him. He decided instead, he even rejected the label president for life.
And I think the pretense of that was he didn't think he had the claim to.
Correct.
from what I
Correct. He did not feel he had the claim to everything, but et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
Now, from my own personal viewpoint, I think there are several European families that could legitimately claim to be monarch of America as a whole. Of course, first of all, you would have the current ruling house of England, although that wouldn't exactly be the best claim. The next claim that you could come up with, conceivably, would be the Bourbons, the house that helped us win our independence from the illegitimate ruling House of England. You also have, and based as well as based off their claim to the French Louisiana, etc., the stuff that we bought from Napoleon. You also have, because a lot of that land was controlled by Spain, you also have the Spanish royal family also having a claim to rule over America. And we cannot forget the elephant in the room of the Native Americans having some sort of claim to ruling over America. Now, for me personally, I think that because of our English, shall we say, patrimony, I think the best claim, if we want to use that, would be whoever is the current Stuart claimant, which would currently be Franz, Duke of Bavaria. He is currently 87 years old. Now, officially speaking, but we do not endorse any particular claimant or candidate. We'll look at the following criteria when determining a future American monarch. The heir apparent must be, and I'm quoting now, the heir apparent must be of a family lineage closely tied to American history or the history of lands currently a part of the United States, descended from some prior nobility, a citizen at the time of installation as monarch, a practicing member of either the Catholic, Orthodox, Anglican, or Lutheran churches, a person of undeniable honors with impartiality toward all Americans, an adult, loyal to their spouse, willing to pledge their lives to uphold the Ten Commandments, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and to uphold the best interests of the American people, willing to renounce all previous claims to nobility, and most importantly, being a morally upstanding individual in both private and public life. Those are the requirements as listed under the Monarchist of America platform.
And as far as specifically selecting a monarch, there will be kind of like a caucus of sorts, where once we become a party, the party itself will then select a party based or select a monarch based off of the recommendations over the course of the length of the party's history. The people that have come forward proposing themselves as the heir or through alternative means, but it will be more or less a personal back and forth between the party, eventual party, or not a party yet, but the eventual party and the person wanting a claim to the throne. And that's the base the base qualifications. And then as we speak to the person, of course, we can make the decision there. But that's far in the future. And I also had something pulled up as far as what we would be. There is one thing. It's called a Republican. This is the specific long answer term straight from our platform. The MOA proposes reforming the United States into a monarchy, specifically a representative Republican semi-constitutional monarchy. So a lot of the different branches of the country will remain the same. The legislature and the Supreme Court will be virtually untouched. The only thing that will change is the executive branch. And then we will draw back the Senate, things like the Senate, and after I'm done, we can roll through Charles and Victor about the bulk of his question. But it will be in my opinion, it will be very much a kind of a new thing. Um, I personally take a lot of inspiration from kind of English type like history, while William, I'd imagine, takes it from a very Roman perspective. But it all comes together, and we don't want like slapping we don't want slapping a absolutist sticker on our government to be the explanation of what American monarchy will look like. Obviously, that would be very. We spent the last like 4 months, about almost half a year, looking into what American monarchy will look like as far as the governmental system and stuff like that. Um, I don't really know if there's an analogous system to what we're devising. It's kind of a new branch of monarchism, basically. That's what I told somebody earlier today. Is that it's a new branch of monarchism. It's not going to necessarily exactly look like monarchists of the past, like monarchs of the past have looked, or monarchies of the past have looked. Though there are some through lines, we use the term that describes the Spanish kingdom to kind of link up with ours in that way, that we use that term. I believe theirs is a democratic constitutional monarchy or something like that, but we're kind of using all the forms of what makes America more or less English influence. Yes, there is some Roman influence there a little bit, and some and monarchy. So we're kind of making a new thing. That's my opinion on the bulk of his question. Now I'm going to turn it over to William about, you know, what our, well, I kind of stated what MOA, the MOA platform kind of states about what our governmental system will look like. But if William has any opinions, and then we can pass it down the line. Good, take it away, William.
One thing I think we need to assure everyone here is in no way, state, or form are we advocating for a full absolutionist system. We're not trying to build Saudi Arabia
Yeah.
and the US of A. We're
And
not all
yeah, there are people who believe that, but who want that, which is perfectly fine. You're a monarchist. If you want that, that's fine. But we've met in the middle, and we're going semi-constitutional because we think the Constitution is an integral part of what makes America America. So we're maintaining a lot of that kind of stuff. But yes, we are.
Yeah, so we're not all going gung ho, democracy is bad, we're going to get rid of voting in general. In fact, we've discussed at length, and we're very much still in support of the democratic system, especially in the form of local governments. So, voting it for your state, local, city, county governors and stuff, as well as for Congress, that's still going to be widely encouraged, and representation is still going to happen. Mark.
Mhm. And yeah, though it'll change from now, the Senate will be changed a little bit. It'll go back to the way it originally was, but for the most part, the House, the Congress will stay much the same. We've implemented a thing called the President of the Congress, which has existed in America's history to kind of be um, America's representative leader. So we kind of have that going too. So, Charles.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily gun ho on personally keeping the Congress as we necessarily currently have it. I mean, I would want a limitation of its powers, but that has nothing to do with with how it's set up. But the upper house, the Senate, I preferably would want to see be more of a House of Lords sort of deal, where the nobility is a membership of it. But in regards to the question as a whole, if I can find the correct channel where we posted it in, my advocacy for my ideal monarchical system I guess in a way it's 17th century, but it's very specifically 17th century Jacobite. So once again, royal power on the national level, or I guess we would say federal level in our case, but a heavy emphasis on local liberties. And then also things like if for whatever reason Canada randomly decides to go Jacobite and we go Jacobite, I don't know why that would happen, but assuming that does, for whatever reason, Canada would and America, we would still maintain our own separate parliaments. There wouldn't be an overarching parliament between the two, right? So this is sort of the um, traditional Jacobite idea that the Usurpers Union, which was the original merger of England and Scotland into Great Britain, shouldn't continue to exist. The idea that Scotland should still have its own parliament and the only person in London telling them what to do should be the king. And so, I mean, it would kind of go the same way. I don't see that happening with an internal division of the United States because at this point, our culture is pretty amalgamous. I mean, if, for instance, Louisiana and the Spanish sections of the country still maintain their own culture, right? And Louisiana was still French and the Spanish portions of like California stuff were still Spanish, then I would say, hey, why not split it into 3 separate kingdoms that would all act together uniformly on an international level? But that's not going to happen, so it's completely irrelevant. Yeah, I mean, I would say that I guess it's 17th century Jacobite. So I guess you're 18th century Jacobite. So I guess you're correct in that assumption on my personal behalf. And now I will hand it off to Victor. And then I guess we can take some questions on this issue, and then go on to our second topic.
Okay. I think that it can work because I will address a point that was made earlier tonight. The Senate was supposed to be sort of a House of Lords-esque type thing because the senators were supposed to be elected, according to the Constitution, appointed by the state legislatures, not elected by the people. The early 1900s progressivism changed that. So we have 2 publicly elected federal legislative bodies, which sort of dilutes the point of having bicameral legislation. Anyway, in our platform, I believe we say that we are going to return the power of appointing the Senate to the state legislators anyway.
Yeah. That was the point. Yes.
But we, in my absolutely ideal vision, of course, this is not what the platform is advocating for. This is my ideal. I would most likely want the guy, the head, the monarch of America, to be assisted by a group of nobility. That group of nobility would rule more directly over certain parts of the country, like, for example, the Southeast or Texas or something like that. And those nobles would bring up to the king sort of reports on what the different parts of the nation are doing, because of course a nation of our size cannot be ruled directly by one person, and that it would just be too much work for one person to have to sweat let's just say a monsoon hurricane that is landing in southern Florida, when there are, of course, that would be a national issue, which kind of undermines my point. But in either case, let me try to think of a small issue. Okay, a blizzard in Montana. The king should not be stressing over a blizzard in Montana that should be more of an issue of a more local ruler. And if a local ruler needs any help, going to the king, I just use this as a placeholder, going to the king and asking for either a visitation or funding to be made available to assist with flood relief efforts, that would be more in line of what I would see the king doing. Of course, if there is a legitimate national issue, the king should step in directly and take care of it himself.
And I do believe we have the king managing and declaring on interstate commerce, like certain things that require, like in between the states. I think that's in the platform too.
Yes.
Yeah, the king can act, or the emperor. We have an emperor, and that's our title for our monarch will be the emperor, mainly because we've thought about it. And a king is it's just we have too big of a country to not be an empire,
Well,
not at least in name, have an emperor.
Yeah,
And
I still.
as you were saying, Charles.
Oh yeah, I mean, that one is a little. Obviously, it's a battle of semantics, but that's going to be real awkward if for some reason the Holy Roman Empire comes back, because ideally the Holy Roman Empire would be an empire encompassing all of Christendom, so it'd be a little weird having an emperor subject to another emperor, hypothetically.
I mean, that would kind of be the same thing as like if Emperor Hirohito is still not Hirohito. If the Emperor of Japan is still around, that's going to be awkward as well. But yeah, it's kind of
Wouldn't be awkward because it would be two different nations coincidentally using the same title, Emperor of country.
Yeah, well, I mean, specifically, and the Holy Roman Empire is supposed to be a union of all Christendom, which is why, like, this is why, like, the King of France was never the Emperor of the French until Napoleon decided to come in and wreck the thing, because you can't be the King of France if they already got the Holy Emperor over there. Anyways, I guess if everybody is finished, do we want to open it up to questions about forms of government now, or at the end of the?
Let's actually open it up now, and we'll get to our next topic after this brief question time. So if anybody would like to speak, hit the hand button to request to speak, and we will put you up here. And I see we already have the Polish.
Oh, sorry.
And I don't think Polish needs to
into conference chat, and I'll read that.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Polish.
Hi. So I know you guys were talking about monarchy and stuff, but I want to know more about what's happening in America. Yeah. So apparently, President Biden might have improperly avoided paying Medicare taxes before he took office, and could owe up to the IRS up to $500,000, according to the Congressional Research Service report. Can I have your opinions?
Well, I guess that's actually sort of fits, I guess, with our second topic. But I guess I don't know, tax evasions and republics. Not to do the he's literally Hitler thing, but because I don't think President Biden is in any way as bad as Hitler. Hitler actually, when he became chancellor, had a tidy sum of unpaid taxes that he because he never paid any taxes on Mein Kampf and all the royalties from that. So I guess I would add that as soon as, obviously, once he took power, the Fuhrer was deemed tax exempt because reasons. I don't know. This is just sort of a common dealio, I guess. People who I don't know. I mean, in regards to Biden specifically, I don't know. It just sort of seems part and parcel for the political class to have some sort of scandal like this. I mean, I would be more surprised if it turns out that everybody in Congress all at once had no tax related issues at all. That would be more surprising to me.
Honestly, from a historical perspective, public servants and major public figures committing tax evasion is just Tuesday. I mean, the reason Sam Adams started the entire chain of events that led to the American Revolution was because he accidentally started a riot trying to escape the police for tax evasion.
And just wanted to cut in here. We actually had to, John, if you want to say it, go ahead, John, because you were the one who did it.
Yeah, I locked down the chat. Let's keep off-topic discussions on other channels. The conference chat is for the topics at hand, so I don't know where the conversation was going, but yeah, just move that elsewhere.
Anyway,
I do remember somebody asked another question, which was, what do you think of sort of a Christian democracy kingdom, if I remember correctly? So I guess I answered the last one. So.
people were discussing it in conference checks, Joe. We don't need to elaborate any further on that. Now we have to get to our next topic, which
Yeah, it was off topic.
is the debt ceiling proposed increase.
Shall I give the introduction on this?
Why not?
Go ahead.
Okay, so the U.S.
You can unlock down the chat.
Okay.
The U.S. has two existential problems when it comes to our nation. One is partisan politics. The other is our horrible spending habits. Currently, they are screaming toward each other at warp speed, getting ready to collide, and everything in the way is going to get obliterated. Congress is at a stalemate on whether or not to raise the debt ceiling. Democrats want to raise it, of course they do, because they want to spend more money without giving a good reason on how they're going to pay for it, or by reasonably balancing the budget. And Republicans are using this as a wonderful time to actually act like they are the party of fiscal responsibility, even though
For once?
just as much money. Yeah, for once.
Yeah, I have some opinions on this. So once you're done, William, it's ridiculous the way this is going. But yeah, continue, William.
So basically, if we do not work this out and we reach the debt ceiling, I forget exactly when we will reach it, either late October, early November, we will default on all of our debts.
Ooh.
Partisan politics right now has a really good chance of legitimately, and I mean legitimately, this isn't an overstatement.
Let me look up current debt total sum. Let me see if I can pull that up while you're speaking.
Legitimately bankrupting the United States of America.
I always thought that if that happened, the government just went to shut down. I didn't, because we had a government shutdown a few years ago under the Obama administration, and we didn't default on all of our debts then.
We are currently at a crisp $28.5 trillion in debt.
Now that's pocket change in Zimbabwe.
Okay, but Charles, that shutdown was because Congress couldn't come to agreement on making a budget for the year. That's very different than Congress literally running out of money because we didn't raise the ceiling for borrowing more.
Oh yes, it's a different thing. So I guess it would be John's turn to.
Yeah, it just feels like each president kind of kicks the ball down the road as far as debt goes. We keep spending. Surplus spending has been a thing since Roosevelt. The second Roosevelt, Franklin, and it just doesn't really help a lot of things because you gotta keep worrying about the debt, and the more you push it down the road, the bigger it's going to get unless we actually start conserving our money and conserving and cutting costs and everywhere. It's going to be more and more of a problem, I'd imagine, and it's going to become more of a danger What if you default? What if we default on 100 trillion or 200 trillion? You know, our long-term debt is, I think, well into the hundreds of trillions. So it just becomes a huge problem, and it can't spell anything good for America, in my honest opinion. I'm not that too knowledgeable on economics, but I do think that this is a problem, and it doesn't take a economics degree to say that.
What a government shutdown actually does. They are required by law to dole out the Social Security payments to everybody that's eligible for them. They are required to do that by law. They literally cannot stop that money spigot at all unless they decide to end Social Security.
Well, all they would actually need to do is make Social Security discretionary spending, because Social Security and our other welfare programs are what's known as mandatory spending. If everybody thinks back to Gov class that they took in high school, so yeah, so it's not just Social Security; it's also literally our entire federal welfare state, and other and I assume other things. I hope other things. I hope the welfare state isn't the only mandatory spending we have, because but anyways.
I still stand by. We could save a lot of money if we stopped throwing Lockheed Martin bones for a jet that has been in the making for 20 years now, and we have yet to see anything working from it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
We
defense
need to
spending.
spend our money efficiently, is what we
Yeah.
need.
Well, when it comes to defense spending specifically, obviously that Lockheed Martin thing is a little annoying, but really the biggest fault is that some of the military departments have use it or lose it, where they're given a lot of money.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, kind of
Yeah. So I mean,
waste money. It's a money wasting scheme.
yeah.
That's
I
what
mean,
Anyway,
so I'm using the 2019 budget here because obviously 2020 and 2021 will be a little whack. I'm not even sure. Do we even have a normal budget for this year?
I don't think we'll,
Or is it
I
just
don't think
arbitrary
we'll,
spending bills?
I don't think we'll have a normal budget for the foreseeable because Congress doesn't want to pass a budget.
Yeah, it's literally just spending bills, not the anyways, that's completely beside the point. So in 2019, according to the Congressional Budget Office, we spent 676 billion rather on defense. Now, I heard recently, and obviously take this with a grain of salt because I can't just pull up this source offhand. 20%, we waste 20% of the budget, right? So that would mean that is let me just do the quick calculations here. Times 0.20. That, I guess that's, unless I did my math completely wrong, that's $135 billion that could have been spent elsewhere. So
yeah.
from the Defense Department that that allegedly they waste 20% of it. Now, obviously, we will never approach 100% efficiency with the money we spend. In hindsight, there's always ways to spend that money a little more efficiently. But still, that's a little unacceptable. And I was thinking about this earlier, so let me just pull up the cost of a Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier. Because we need to replace our Nimitz class carriers because they're all fastly approaching or have approached the 50-year retirement age. So the unit cost for one of these things is $12 billion. So the U.S. federal government, apparently the Defense Department wastes $135 billion a year, allegedly, if I got my math right and that 20% statistic is correct. Which means that we could build, what, at least 10 of these things with that money? And put that into perspective, I'm sure as in terms of single units, the aircraft carriers are the most expensive thing the Defense Department spends money on as single units, not taking into account the cost of development programs for different things, but just like the physical item itself. That's insane. That's crazy. I mean, like, think of that. 10 of these new Gerald R4 class carriers with the money we're spending. Obviously, we're never going to recoup all those costs, and some of that saved money would go to the other departments like the Army and whatnot. Think about that. We could replace all of the Nimitz class carriers with that money we're wasting. And aircraft carriers are really expensive. And then the point I wanted to make when we got into the defense budget, and then I'll pass it off to Victor or somebody else, is that in 2019 we spent $375 billion. So I guess more than half. I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know. I'm too lazy to do basic math, and I'm tired. The of the defense budget on just paying down the interest on the debt we owe. Right, which is insane. Those people talk about defense most often, and I think rightly so, given the waste that does exist. But Social Security is about a fourth of our federal spending at $1 trillion. So those three, our welfare state covers about half of the budget. But just think about that. Decades with I think an exception during the Clinton administration, oddly enough, given the general stereotypes of both parties, we haven't had a surplus in decades. Once again, minus the Clinton administration. And this is what it gets us: paying a good chunk of the budget on paying down the interest, not paying off the debt, just paying down the interest. That is insane. And then I've taken too much time, and I guess we can get into how monarchy solves this later. But as to general thoughts, I'll move it on to Victor.
Yeah, generally speaking, how monarchy solves it. Now, of course, you're going to have variations among monarchs because it's a very flexible system. But generally speaking, monarchism can assist that. Yeah, and we'll pass it to
Victor. Victor was the one who hasn't had a chance to speak on this fully.
Okay. I mentioned this in episode 1. I think that we need to be spending our money efficiently. We do not need to be spending $10,000 on a desk and chairs in an office building. We need to be spending market price for things like this, and we need to be charging market price for the things that we sell. We are getting money because we apparently need to fund people like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, etc., when all we need to do is spend our money efficiently, cut out the bloat and the pork in our spending. Overall, this isn't just a defense issue, this is other issues. I believe the State Department also has this sort of issue as well. And we're not talking about that because the defense budget is orders of magnitude more than the State Department's budget. But we did get a good point brought up that Republicans aren't doing anything to pay down the debt. And why is that? Because they don't want to be seen as cutting military spending, because spending on military is very popular with the Republican base.
Yeah, once you cut the fat of either party, and we'll get back to this, you're going to end up with the same type of spending habits One side just might favor gun control and the other side doesn't. You're just going to get, like, they're all, essentially, most of them are sharks once you wipe away the elephant paint or the donkey paint. You know what I mean? The once you wipe away the red and the blue, or yeah, the red and the blue, they're just snakes. You know, you get snake scales. So yeah, it's a problem. Yeah. The next time is
Well,
is
how
it,
monarchy would fix it.
yeah,
Yes.
how we fix it.
And I think if you'll allow me to go.
Yeah, we can go the opposite.
Yes. Okay. So as for how a monarchy would be able to fix this, a monarch is essentially trained for life in the position, of course, not the first one, or maybe even the second one, depending on who the first one is, but definitely the third one, trained for life for the position and knows that they are monarch until they die or they abdicate. So the monarch knows that they will suffer the consequences of their actions rather than being able to punt it to the next 4-year election cycle to where they don't have to feel the burn of their political goals, a la, and I don't like to say, and I really hate to say this, Ronald Reagan. Reagan was credited with Reaganomics, but it left an economy for Clinton to hold the bag on, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is really concerning, and part of it is too that 2 centuries ago, this sort of spending would have been seen as completely absurd. Firstly, because there was no such thing as a welfare state in the traditional sense back then. Now, the closest thing I think I know
What you mean
I
in a
know of
modern
from
sense?
history, in a modern sense, but the closest thing I know of from history is that Rome gave bread to the poor citizens. That's the closest thing I can think of from history. But 200 years ago, and earlier than that, people would live on the parish. If you read a really old English book and you hear the term on the parish, think of it as living off the welfare state, except it's the local parish actually doing it, the local church, to use a more, I guess, accessible term. So about, what do you call it?
What are you trying to think of?
Shoot, hold on. So over half of our current budget wouldn't exist 200 years ago. But specifically monarchs, this is also sort of hard to understand because all the land is owned by the government and thus it's owned by us, even though if you try to build a house on federal land, it's at best just going to get bulldozed. At worst, you're going to die in a shootout with federal marshals. Well, probably not, but you'll probably just get arrested in the middle of the night as soon as they figure out where you are. But land used to be owned by the monarch, and the profit of that land would pay for a lot of the spending. So taxes as a percentage of your wealth were a lot less, because what in our modern America is public land, federal land, would be directly owned by the monarch. So imagine the Bureau of Land Management not technically being owned by the federal government, but rather it being owned by the government.
You mean by the monarch?
Yeah, it would be owned. It would not own. Would not be owned by the government, but it would be owned by the monarch, and all the profits, therefore, will, what do you call it? Will be used to fund the government, that will be used to fund the projects the king wants to do. So the Royal Army, ideally, and obviously taxes throughout history were still levied on the people to pay for the Royal Army, but ideally the Royal Army would be paid for by the king. That's not how it ended up working, but that was sort of the picture. So to that effect, a monarchy under the traditional sense would, and this would have to be part of the broader social social transformation of the country. But because you can't just replace the welfare state, as much as I hate to admit it, you can't just cut it off. You have to ensure that the culture would be ready to do things either the old way of doing it, where people would live on the parish and people would actually tithe 10%, something I'm guilty of, admittedly, of not doing. And the parish would take care of the poor people in the local community, which is better, one, from an economic standpoint, because speaking of wasteful departments, a lot of the money that you pay in taxes that goes to the various federal welfare programs actually doesn't end up in the hands of the poor people who it's supposed to benefit. A lot of it ends up getting sucked up in this black hole of bureaucracy, which I'm not saying that it's not going to happen if you localize everything, but it's certainly going to happen. Less.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm gonna have to go ahead and make my point before I have to go.
We are.
Go ahead, John. Then I'll ask the question that's in text chat to Charles.
Okay. As far as how monarchy would solve this, at least under the systems of checks and balances that in an American context is, I would think that a monarch would look at how do I make this economy? How do I supplement this economy in a way that's not going to lead to my children's beheading or disembarment? How am I going to avert disaster in the long term? And the monarch has the ability to do that. Now you might say, a monarch might reign eight years, but that's the same as a president. But when you think about it, that monarch's handing it to his son or to his daughter, or
Yeah.
and it was just like that before. And also, when you have a monarch, when you have one monarch ruling for maybe 10, 20 years, you will have the full brunt of that devastation is on that monarch. So what you could do is, the main reason why, no president has really been impeached is because you have half the system supporting him and covering for him. But in this case, as an independent person, he must act on behalf of the entire population of the United States. And if a impeachment were to happen, say of a monarch, whatever the name might be for it, the entirety of the American people would either support him or be against his economic, woes. So you really, as a monarch, you really have to look at, okay, what do I need to do to ensure? And he's not going to be able to directly manipulate the economy, much like the presidents were. They're not really able to directly manipulate the economy, but their party does. So a monarch doesn't really have to worry about what the party's going to think. And at the same time, it keeps him more responsible because he doesn't have a party to back him up when he does something stupid. So he bears the full responsibility of whatever he does. And he's not being backed. He's not being backed by a party. He's not being backed. He might be backed by his family, but his family say, we're not going to allow the royal party to maintain seats in the legislature. What happens then? Oh, they're just, they're going to kick him out if he's not doing his job. So, you either, and that's that, it's divide and conquer of the Republicans. I say small r Republicans. It's divide and conquer with them. Both the Republicans and the Democrats have a party to support them when they do something stupid. A monarch doesn't really have that. Like I said, yes, he has a family, but that family may not be able to be a part of the legislature or may not be able to do anything like that. And he's dang sure not going to have the people in the legislature to say, hey, let's get this guy out of here if he's doing something objective. It depoliticizes, in my opinion, it depoliticizes failure and it depoliticizes success. So you have a monarch that's either going to be fully the population.
8:55, I mentioned you ready to go.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go, but they're either going to be fully supporting of the monarch or they're going to be fully against the monarch. And that's really all I have to say on the topic. Then again, I'm not really, like I said, I'm not an economics major or anything like that. But I do know that the responsibility over the long term of a monarch definitely outweighs the responsibility of a president that's just in there for 8 years. That's my opinion on the topic. I hate to kind of disturb, but I do have to go. If you wish to participate in the platforms and stuff like this and platform discussions, please join one of our committees. And thank you, and I'll see you next week, hopefully.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Now we will go back to what Ornstein said in conference text chat for Charles. Question, wouldn't having the king pay for the army bankrupt the king? Like, that's how it was back in the 16th and 17th centuries. Charles V of Austria/Spain was constantly in/paying off debt. What's your response to that?
Well, yes, that is sort of how it was. Unfortunately, I was once again saying an ideal, and unfortunately that will mean that soldiers of the king will also have to be supported by the countrymen. But the profits off of the Bureau of Land I am under no illusions that the profits that the federal government actually makes from leasing land for mining and forestry, if that's the proper term, the lumber industry. I'm under no illusions that the current military, even if we make it a lean, green, efficient machine, would be able to actually pay for it. It wouldn't. But that's still the ideal, and yeah.
Okay, we will bring up William now because William has not had a chance to speak in a few minutes. So, William, you can go, and then we will do our next question time, and then we will wrap up question time. And this question time will be more of a general Q&A. You can ask any question you want, and then we will wrap up. So, William, go ahead.
I agree with John, especially about the whole depoliticizing success and the budget and everything, because we gotta think about how much of irresponsible spending is the parties throwing money at programs and initiatives that their supporters like and that their supporters want in order to buy votes, whether it be the Republican Party throwing money into the military, as bloated as it may be, or throwing money to Israel, even though it as a sovereign nation really doesn't need as much economic support as we give it. Frankly, it doesn't need any at all. It's a sovereign nation. And the Democrats throwing countless of billions of dollars into antiquated and bloated social programs that many of which are no longer applicable in the modern era, or are so outdated or based off of such outdated premises, they no longer work efficiently. So by building a monarchy, we help take away the power from political interests and their control over the budget and put it back in the hands of the government and incentivize that government to spend wisely.
Okay, so now we will do a full-blown question time. If you have a question, please use the hand thing. We have a lot of questions, and I know that Fred was first. I don't know out of Adele and Polish historian who came
Polish was
after.
second.
Polish was second. Okay. We
So
will
I
go.
will invite Fred.
We will go with Fred first.
Anyway, okay, there we go.
Oh, hey,
Hello, Fred. How are you?
I'm good. Good night to everyone. Fred, and I have a question here. I was thinking about the whole royal house thing, and I remember something. There's the house which founded Virginia. If they're still out there, they might have a strong claim to the American throne, as they were one of the first founders of what we know as the modern United States, as they were founders of the 13 colonies, after all. So, what do you think about them considering this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What house?
The family which founded Virginia.
I mean, interesting. Once again, I guess a tie to America and American history is important. So I mean, I guess hypothetically they would be in consideration, but me personally got that.
Criteria. Yeah. Our criteria. Under our criteria, whoever the descendant of Sir Walter Raleigh is, he is the founder of Virginia, would be that house's claimant or whatever that may be. But that person would have to want the throne and would have to go through our process for us to determine who that claimant will be. Thank you very much, Fred. Next will be Adele, because Polish historian has volunteered to go last.
Wait in for a second. I have one more part I wanted to add to Fred's.
Okay, go ahead.
But yeah, that was actually something I thought of, not the gentleman who founded Virginia, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to research to see if there was any living descendants of John Rolfe and Pocahontas, because that would be the first native dynasty that English settlers encountered, along with a prominent English settler. The merger of those two families, and I feel like that would have also been an excellent line to choose from.
Okay, Adele, what is your question?
Oh, hello. I had a question for Mr. Charles. The first thing I want to know is, I'll just ask one. Why should America be ruled by a Catholic monarch? In a Catholic society, only
This is a- yeah, so this
2% of
is-
Americans are.
This is a personal opinion question, not the MOBA. Well, simply because Catholicism is the truth. It is true, and hold on. Let me just say that. Let me just say my piece. Catholicism is true, and therefore, what she teaches dogmatically is true, and therefore, the best ordered society would naturally be around one that follows objective truth. So from that sense, I'm not saying that a society ruled by a Protestant monarch would necessarily crumble and fall apart, but I just it just seems logical to me that if I believe Catholicism to be true and her tenets to be true, I want the state, which is supposed to protect the altar, to profess what the altar believes. It's as simple as that. Now we would be here all night debating why Catholicism is true, and unfortunately we haven't the time for that. But operating off the assumption, which if we did have this 5-hour-long debate would be proven logical, that is why I feel as if for the best society, the society must be Catholic and
Okay.
royal, because government.
Thank you very much for your question, Adele. If you have any more questions for Charles specifically, you can DM him and get into that particular debate. Next will be Polish and then Ornstein.
A little Polish?
I want to go last, so I'm gonna let
Oh, you
him
want to go
first.
last? Okay.
I want to end it off.
Okay, Ornstein. Okay. Okay, now it'll be Ornstein, then the Polish.
Oh.
Hello, Ornstein.
Oh, you're a little soft. We can't really hear you.
So,
You're having audio issues, Ornstein.
I'm gonna. I'll just post my.
I think he's gonna type it out. So, Polish, you want to come up? Let's get you back up here.
Yeah, hold on. He's Ornstein is. Oh, he was typing. Oh, now he's typing. Yeah, Polish is very insistent that he wants to be last. Respectable because.
Okay, so I'll allow Ornstein to type his question out.
Let's see. Let's see, and then let's see. Just do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. What?
Hang on. Ornstein is typing, so
And not to have this be awkward silence. I don't know. Is there any minor subject that we can cover in however long Ornstein is? Oh wait, there we go. To follow up on the previous question, when enforcing Catholicism go against American ideals? Yes, because Catholicism.
Remember, this
Catholicism
is a
is
personal question that was asked to Charles directly. Just
yeah.
wanted to let our people on YouTube know this.
Yes. Well, technically, as America currently exists, yes, because America was founded as a Protestant nation, and well, Catholicism is deeply rooted in our heritage. America itself, unfortunately, wasn't Catholic. So, if you mean American ideals, as in what American society is now, with our established religion of secular well, our wokeism is our de facto established religion these days, or our religion of Protestantism, Protestantism, generally speaking, hasn't been very nice to Catholicism. It still isn't nice to Catholicism, but for the Protestants that are nice to Catholicism, generally speaking, culturally, the reason I guess is because we're no longer the big bad, because other big bads exist, like the rampant secular atheist types. So yes, as American values stand, yes, enforcing Catholicism would be empathetical or antithetical to American values, but then again, America has been monarchy as it stands. Unfortunately, is antithetical to America's values. I mean, we're trying to change America's values as they exist. So yeah, that's that's what I have to say about that.
In the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. This podcast got very, very heated. We will see you next week. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.